Hello top percenters, how are you today? What do you think about Genesect Virizion? Yes, today we are returning to Megalo Cannon to talk about the big green deck, and probably the biggest deck that comes solely from Megalo Cannon. But first, let's take a look at the two major players in this deck. First we have Genesect X, a grass-type Plasma X with 170 hit points, the ability Red Signal, which allows you to switch your opponent's active Pokemon for one of their bench Pokemon if you attach a Plasma Energy to him from your hand, effectively giving you even more catchers in your deck. And let's face it, we all want more catcher in our lives. He also has the attack Megalo Cannon, which for 2 grass and a colorless delivers 100 damage to the active, plus 20 to the bench, basically making him a reworked Darkrai. Genesect is also weak to fire, a type that's seen very little play this season, and from what I've seen won't see a drastic increase in play straight away. And finally, Genesect has a retreat cost of 1. Alongside Genesect we have Virizion X, the card that Maxon has been waiting for since Boundaries Crossed, and just like Genesect, it's a grass type. It has 170 hit points, a retreat cost of 1, a weakness to fire. It also has an ability, Spring Breeze, which takes any of your Pokemon that have grass energy attached to them and grants them immunity to status conditions. And finally it has the attack Emerald Slash, which for a grass and a colorless delivers 50 damage and allows you to accelerate 2 grass energies from your deck to your bench. Now let's slow down for a second and look at how these guys can work together. Your principal start in this deck would be Virizion, for your chance to start accelerating energy out of the deck turn 2 and start setting up those Genesects. Now I'm saying Genesects plural, mostly because if you use Virizion to set up one Genesect, you're not really saving time with how quickly you can set up a Genesect. But if you set up more than one, you really do start to save time. Both manually and using Virizion, it will take 3 turns to set up a Genesect, whereas it will take 4 turns to set up 2 and 5 turns to set up 3 Genesects using Virizion. The major slowdown at the start of the game is manually attaching to Virizion, which will take 2 turns. After that you'll be setting up a Genesect a turn. Factor in that you're doing 50 damage each time you accelerate energy, and you can start to see why this is a route you want to take with this deck. But that isn't where Virizion's usefulness stops. Not by a long shot. Virizion's ability just adds to its usefulness, making any Pokemon with grass energy attached immune to special conditions. With cards like Hypnotoxic Laser in format, it is insurmountably important. Hypnotoxic and Burbank can't be used as a way to drop an extra 30 on one of your Pokemon. In fact, it means that Hypnotoxic Laser can no longer be used as a residual plus power. If your opponent wants that plus 10 damage, they have to use the original plus power, which isn't seen in play as Hypnotoxic Laser is seen as a much more valuable card in any list. Now, let's move on to Genesect. As covered earlier, Genesect is quite Darkrai-esque, being able to hit the active and snipe the bench at the same time, and having the same total damage output at 120, and this in itself should be enough to lay claim that this can be competitive, especially with its energy acceleration also delivering damage, and being practically undonkable. But then we factor in Red Signal, Genesect's ability, which allows us an extra capture if a Plasma Energy is attached to Genesect from our hand. This ability, combined with the fact that Genesect doesn't have to be active to use it, can be devastating, especially for certain matchups. Coming into the Plasma Freeze format, people are making some noise about how powerful the set is going to make Keldeo Blastoise, all because of one card, Super Energy Retrieval. By pitching 2 cards, you can pick up 4 basic energy cards from your discard pile, meaning that having the energy to swing for high numbers after losing a Keldeo becomes even more accessible. And, well, this entire deck hits Keldeo Blastoise for weakness, and by turn 3 you can proceed to one-shot everything they put in front of you for your bare minimum, whereas the Keldeo Blastoise player will have to invest a huge amount of energy to one-shot you. And sure, with Energy Retrieval and Super Energy Retrieval it can be done, but your opponent has to invest a lot more cards into each attack than you have to. As for how Genesect Virizion will compete against DTL, I'll be honest, I can't say anything for certain about this matchup, as both decks have built-in acceleration and both can manage to output decent damage. Overall, I can see this matchup coming down mostly to the players involved and Lugia's ability to claim extra prizes. If I had to rate the matchup, I'd say that it's in DTL's favour, but with smart play and maybe a little luck, Genesect Virizion should find this matchup manageable, but that's just my opinion. On the note of decks having an edge, Genesect does have its 2 Spec cards, the G Booster and the G Scope, and both of each offer Genesect an extra attack. Now I'll start with the one that's garnered the most attention, and that is the G Booster. For the same attack cost as Megalo Cannon, Genesect can deliver 200 damage to the defending Pokemon, and then you discard 2 energies attached to Genesect. And this damage isn't affected by effects on the defending Pokemon, so cards like Eviolite and abilities like Safeguard will not factor against G Booster's damage. This card is designed to give Genesect the ability to be a late game closer, and has rightly earned the attention it's receiving. G Booster has the capability to either finish the game quickly, or to shut down threats that your opponent might be setting up in an attempt to pressure you. But that's just one of 2 Spec cards that Genesect has access to. The second is G-Scope. For the same cost as Megalo Cannon, 2 Grass and a Colorless, Genesect can deal 100 damage to a bench Pokemon with no drawback, giving Genesect the ability to act as Raikou X without having to recharge the attack, and essentially not needing to maintain a specific board setup, meaning we have all of Raikou's benefits with none of his drawbacks, and allowing you to set up knockouts on the bench or even follow up on setup from Genesect's Megalo Cannon. Now, both of these cards are A-Spec, meaning that you can only run one of them. So how do we decide? Well, personally I prefer G-Scope. The ability to put pressure on an opponent's setup can be invaluable, and if you get G-Scope in your early game, you can make an attempt to stop that setup. That being said, G-Booster does offer a flat 200 damage, and as mentioned before, can be your late game closer. All I can really suggest is test with both cards, and see which suits you better as a player. Whether you prefer big numbers or the ability to apply pressure, both cards are worth having a look at, if you really want to run one of these A-Specs. With that in mind, there may be other A-Spec cards you prefer in their place. These are just Genesect specific. What do you guys think? Does Genesect earn a yay or a nay? Would you run Scope or Booster? Let me know below. And sorry if this episode seems a bit short, but this deck is kind of elegant in its simplicity, if you get what I'm saying. But if you do like what you've seen, maybe you could click that like button, or hit the subscribe button if you want to be one of the first to catch the latest episodes or our exploits in Stadium. Until next time, I'm Joey. You guys are the top percent. Peace.